All right. Joining me back on the show, first time I think in months, is Joe Reynolds, the one and only. Welcome back.
Great to see you, Jonathan. Thanks for inviting me.
So as we meet, we're it's the presidential race, I think, is starting to kick off. I think Nikki Haley's about to announce, and I think Ron DeSantis is going to announce when he's going to announce. Donald Trump has already announced. Larry Hogan, I think Chris Sununu have all indicated they want to jump in. Where do you see this going? Are we at risk of making the same mistake we did in 2016?
Yeah, I see Trump's got his 30% that are with him all the way, and you take the 70%, you divide it all up, do the math, and he wins again. So it's pretty no brainer, even for a 13-year-old. You could do the math. I'm going to Nikki Haley's event in on February 15th. I hope I get a chance to talk to her. And as you know, I'm very never Trump. So when I talk to her, I'm going to say, listen, for me to support you, I need you to separate from Trump immediately. You could be the person, be that candidate that separates from Trump. I know you think in your mind, and all your consultants say, play it safe because you want all these MAGA voters to come back to you. But the winner is going to be the one that doesn't play it safe and tries to separate from Trump. I don't think DeSantis is going to do it. I've already seen the waffling from Hogan and Sununu last week. I was flabbergasted. They're already walking back there. Trump is crazy. He's a threat to America. And they're back to, I'll support the nominee.
I know Sununu did that, but did Hogan do that?
Hogan waffled, and he didn't separate himself from I'll support the nominee. He said Trump will not be the nominee.
Yeah.
I will support the nominee. Of course, he was on Yu Hewitt's show, and Yu Hewitt tried to pin him down and said, what if Trump's the nominee? And Hogan said, I'll support the nominee. So there's already a lot of backtracking.
That is depressing. I mean, Chris Sununu, I guess kind of could be expected. He actually did vote for Trump in 2020, although he's been very critical of him since then. But Hogan famously did not vote for him in 2020.
Yeah, and Hogan was very outspoken about criticizing Trump. Sununu's been more measured, although he does criticize him. But Hogan said he's a threat to American democracy. He obviously got people killed on January 6th. I don't understand the consistency to go from there to I'll support the nominee if it's Trump. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's incredibly inconsistent. These guys get into consultant mode. They're all trying to game this out to avoid alienating any voters. And what you end up doing is creating this inauthentic persona. In my opinion, you create an inauthentic persona, and voters smell that.
Yeah, DeSantis in particular reminds me of that. Like the thing that actually someone pointed out about DeSantis is, have you ever seen him in a context where he was likable? Is like, I don't know if it's like his pandering to Trump. Like, I just don't know if he is genuinely a likable person.
I'm not sure. I saw him on that ad, and admittedly, it was an awful governor's ad when he first sucked up to Trump with his kid building the wall.
It was that ad. I sort of understood that ad was tongue in cheek, by the way. Like,
it was a little bit amusing. There was a thread of humor there. So I don't know why he's trying to get this angle on all the MAGA grifters who make the money, to get them on board so they don't go to Trump. I don't know if it's going to work for him. There's a lot of talk on the sites I follow, like the Bulwark. You probably follow them as well. And the Dispatch saying that, you can't just play this long game. It's the same thing Rubio and Cruz did with Trump in 2016. They played this long game, hoping that they could just capture those voters at the last instant. Once Trump dropped out, he never dropped out. and the rest is history.
And now look what happened to Rubio. He's one of like 3 senators that many of my fellow conservatives hate because he's considered to be the worst of both worlds, MAGA on social issues and to the left in some ways on fiscal issues.
Yes, he doesn't know who he wants to be anymore. You know, I read his books; they were interesting. He had interesting things to say, and I think Trump broke him in 2016, and that's it. He can't figure out what happened still. Well, what happened is you turned out to be a phony. That's all.
Yeah, and I say this as someone who supported Rubio in 2016. I can't see myself doing that again.
No, the guy who I think would best go up against Trump, and it's the same problem as all the other guys, is Chris Christie. Chris Christie is a talented, you know, he's a talented retail politician. However, he can't escape that Trump stink, you know, and he can't really separate himself. When he does separate himself, he would be good. If he took that line of calling Trump a loser, I think he's the best politician that can do it. You can saw what he did to Rubio in the New Hampshire debate. You've seen what he does when he's very good on his feet. He's not defensive. When he's put on defense, he still comes across good. When he goes on offense, he's a former prosecutor. He's good. This is the kind of thing I criticize Harris about, to my concern, because all the Harris stands out there go after me. I say, you know, when she's a prosecutor, she's good. But when they ask her a question and put her on the back feet, she's no good. She's awful. And nobody wants to hear that, but that's the truth. Now, Chris Christie is a great retail politician. He could slice and dice Trump. I know he could. He's got a bit of the entertainer in him, but he won't. He just can't cut that cord. And just like the rest of them, they just can't quite figure out. They're all just hoping for Trump to die, you know. And somebody said Trump's mother lived to 88 and his father lived to 93. So don't count on that.
Yeah. Well, the presidential election is heating up. By the way, my only concern about Chris Christie is the fact that Donald Trump or any other person would just have to say the word Bridgegate and he would collapse.
Well, if he's practiced enough, I think, and he also, you know, trained Trump in the debates. So I think he knows a little bit about where Trump's weak spots are. And I think anybody really could put Trump on the back foot, saying, listen, you're a loser. You lost to Joe Biden. You lost it. And even if Trump comes back and said, well, I beat you, Chris Christie can come back and say, yeah, but you lost to Joe Biden. I never lost to Joe Biden. You know, Chris Christie is that kind of pugnacious character that could go toe to toe with Trump, but I don't see him doing it.
Yeah. Less than just over, like well over a year out, actually almost 2 years out. Who do you think Joe Biden is going to win re-election?
God, you know, the Democratic side is a mess too, Jonathan. You know, does Biden run? Does he not run? You know, I've been telling everybody this for years. Biden's going to run. You know why? Because he's a vain politician, just like the rest of them. He thinks he's the only guy who can do it. It doesn't matter if he's 82 or 92. He's going to run for president again. And if he does, then that clears the field. Nobody's going to run against him. I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe somebody will sneak in and run against him, but he'd probably still win. He's got South Carolina wrapped up. They're talking about put South Carolina on.
Yeah, and they're gonna move the South Carolina up to the beginning.
Yes, South Carolina is going to be the first in the nation. Good for me. I live in South Carolina. I can go brace all these guys. And
I don't know if Republicans are going to do the same thing. I think they're keeping their schedule.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all gotten sick and tired of the Iowa caucus. I like New Hampshire as first in the nation, but the Iowa caucus.
To be fair, the Republicans have always run their Iowa caucus better than the Democrats.
True. Yes. True.
Yeah.
We'll see what the Republicans do, but it's nice to have first in the nation South Carolina here, and I can even if it's third in the nation, we got a lot of play down here. I met a lot of candidates.
Yeah.
Um,
So
Go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, well, the presidential election heats up, stuff in the House is going on, and I'm actually curious to know, are you surprised that McCarthy has lasted as long as he had?
No, I think he's behind the scenes. He's a very smooth operator, and he's a power broker, and he knows where all the bodies are buried, and he can get people on his side. I the Looney Tunes, it takes a lot of time and energy to vote out a speaker, and I don't think they have a willing and dedicated caucus. Maybe they do, but we'll see. Who's the alternative? Who are they going to have as speaker? Once they start saying we're getting rid of McCarthy, then it breaks the field a little bit, and then you end up with somebody the Democrats want.
Yeah. I mean, theoretically, like one member now has to initiate. 5 Republican defections can do him in.
You look at, if you have those, they'll never do it because they'll never get elected again. But you look at 5 Republicans who won in Joe Biden districts, like in New York, and if they said to the Democrats, listen, this is what we want. We want to be on these committees. We want this kind of action on this legislation. We want this brought to the front on such and such. They could probably broker a deal with the Democrats to elect a speaker who. There was some mention of Fred Upton from Michigan.
Yeah, he's gone now.
But it doesn't have to be a member.
Right.
You could have somebody outside the House who comes in as a caretaker speaker. I don't know. It's all West Wing politics, really. It's never going to happen. They're going to stick with McCarthy probably for the next 2 years, I think.
We never really got to talk about the midterms, by the way, how it was red waves in New York and Florida, mini red wave in California, neutral year, like most other places, like potentially a blue wave in Michigan.
I predict, I'm going to blow my own horn, Jonathan. I predicted plus 13 Republican House, and people said I was insane.
It was plus 9.
It was plus 9. They said I was insane, red wave, this and that. The thing people don't remember is that the districts are so gerrymandered nowadays that it's very, very difficult to get any waves. There's no blue waves. There's no red waves.
Yeah.
All these districts are cooked right now. So
the
there's
average
40.
The average prediction of the blogs that I was following was plus 22. So that was impressive if you got plus 13.
Well, I said there's only 40 districts that are competitive. So then you get a couple wild cards like Bobert's district. So let's say 44 districts that are competitive. I mean, even if Democrats are awful, and they only win 40% of those, that just goes to show that, you're not going to get that much of a spread. So I predicted low, and I was right. And on the Senate, I predicted 50-50. Everybody said I was insane. It was going to be 52 Republicans, and it ended up being 51-49 Democrats.
The result that shocked me, honestly, was Pennsylvania.
That came in early, and I was shocked that it came in early. The rest of the ones took a week to sort out, and I thought that one had been a tenterhook one.
I mean, once I heard that, woke up to hear, oh yeah, Fetterman had won. I mean, I think it was clear, like as the evening wore on, Fetterman was going to win. Once I heard that, I was like, okay, I need to hear one more call, but I think this is over.
Yeah. I think the candidate was wrong for the state. He's a New Jersey resident. Pennsylvania and New Jersey don't get along. It's like Canada and United States. All right, we don't hate each other, but there's a little rivalry there. So you don't bring in a candidate from New Jersey. And besides that, Dr. Oz he was never really MAGA enough, was he, for a lot of people? Yeah. And he was never really moderate enough for others. It's very difficult. Yeah. You look at what happened to Mastriano. He was as MAGA as you get. The election was stolen and he got destroyed. So the Republicans, I've seen, same goes in Massachusetts, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan. they're destroying themselves by these purity contests. They're rooting out all the moderates. And maybe that'll work in places like Texas, and maybe it'll work in other places, but it's not really going to work in Arizona. It's not going to work in Pennsylvania. It's not going to work in Michigan or Wisconsin.
Yeah, the evidence that Oz was not MAGA enough was something like this, and I thought was going to happen, but Chester County, which is in the suburbs of Philadelphia, I think it was Biden plus 16 or 17. It was Fetterman plus 4. So there were some ticket splitters, despite how well Fetterman did, like particularly in the West, there were some ticket splitters the other way in the suburbs of Philadelphia.
Right, but I think Fetterman tamped down some of the rural districts that went, were plus 60 for Trump or plus 40 for Trump, and he tamped it down to, if you tamp down those districts, their strategy is if you tamp it down to plus 32 instead of plus 40, then you're gaining enough votes to win you an election.
Yeah, Western Pennsylvania had results at I think Westmoreland County, which I think was like Trump plus 29. It was Oz plus 20. So yeah, just going through some of the numbers there, it's and in fact, I think there was a Trump county in Western Pennsylvania that voted for Shapiro.
Right. I mean, Mastriano was even too crazy for some of the MAGAs.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting when I mean,
and we lucked out. I thought Carrie Lake was going to win. That was one of my only
wrong
predictions. I thought she would win, and I guess Hobbs deserves a little congratulations for not debating her. The strategy worked.
I mean, Lake, at least during the campaign, was considered to be Mastriano, but with a bit more discipline.
Yeah, unfortunately, what was it, 2 weeks before the election, she was saying, any McCain voters in the room, get the heck out. And what are McCain voters going to do? They say, okay, I guess I'm voting for Hobbs then. I mean, it's a dumb political move.
Democrats in Arizona have been the anti-McCain sentiment in the Arizona Republican Party has been the gift that keeps on giving for Arizona Democrats.
They can't help themselves. These purity contests. It's the same thing that happened with Republicans in California. You see it happening in Arizona. You see it in Massachusetts. They've just abandoned any attempt to put in a moderate Republican governor is gone from now on, because they all want these purity tests.
Except in Vermont.
Possibly Vermont, right? So now Baker is gone in Massachusetts, and they put up a crazy candidate, and guess what? He lost.
In Massachusetts, I think the new chair of the Massachusetts GOP, I think she's considered to be someone who knows what she's doing.
Okay.
But I guess a personal anecdote about Arizona is that I actually personally know someone who's a liberal Democrat in Arizona, and she actually thinks very highly of John McCain, but about no other Republican. So just to give you a sense of how monumentally stupid it is if you're an Arizona Republican to go after John McCain.
Right. It's like going after Barry Goldwater.
Exactly. But I mean, I just want to talk about one more thing with regard to the upcoming elections, which is that, actually, let's talk about a couple of the governor's races, because I was mentioning Pennsylvania and how Josh Shapiro had the exact combination he needed. And by the way, I think we should give him a little bit of grief for boosting Mastriano in the primary.
Yeah. I'm never happy with those kind of shenanigans. Same went for a couple characters out in I think it was the district that had
there was some districts in Michigan where the Democrat who won basically boosted the primary challenger.
Yes, and he was crazy, and guess what? It worked for them. I'm afraid they're going to try it again over and over, and one of these days it's not going to work, and it's going to backfire just like it did with Trump. All the Democrats I talked to were so happy about Trump being the candidate, and I honestly thought he never had a chance. And I thought, okay, Hillary is a lock now, I guess.
Yeah.
And then it all backfired on some of these people, and then Trump was president for 4 years.
Yeah, I keep saying that about this tactic. It works until it doesn't.
Right. Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
But I think the matchup in Pennsylvania, we could see a similar matchup next year in North Carolina. Jewish Democratic Attorney Generals named Josh winning the governor's race against extremist Republicans. I think Josh Stein might be share that distinction with Josh Shapiro next year.
I'm unfamiliar with the candidates there. What's the Republican candidate? Is he going to
Mark
be
Robinson, who's the lieutenant governor, who actually got elected lieutenant governor there, so maybe there's a bit of caution there. He has said such colorful gems, I think, as Jews are indoctrinating our children through Hollywood.
Oh, okay. So, well, the difficulty with North Carolina, I think, is that the legislature has chipped away at the governor's powers. So even if a Democrat is elected, they don't have as much power as they used to. This is, part and parcel of gerrymandering districts. Once legislatures get the override veto, they, start cutting governor's powers, and then, the power is all in the legislature.
Right. It's similar to, I think, Andy Beshear in Kentucky. He doesn't have that much real power because I think that's one of the states where the legislature only needs a simple majority to override a veto. So, I mean, Republicans are still able to get done what they want, even with him as governor. And despite that, he's I think 60% approval rating in Kentucky.
Popular governor. People like him. From what I've heard, he just keeps his mouth shut. That's the charm, right?
Right. I mean, I think we should be careful because, like, Laura Kelly out in Kansas, who is also quite a popular governor, but she only won re-election by like 2 points.
Right.
Yeah, that was a surprise to some of my friends were predicting she would lose.
What do you think of this California Senate race?
I think she's gonna retire. If I had to pick, if I had to rank the candidates who are currently running, I would say Adam Schiff at the top, Ro Khanna in the middle, and at bottom I would say Katie Porter.
Katie Porter jumped in kind of early, almost dancing on Dianne Feinstein's grave a little bit. It's but she shouldn't be in there. She should have retired last time. And these people like Grassley, they're in there too long. They're just holding up spaces. Their staff runs everything, and I don't think it's right.
Yeah. Although Patrick Leahy, who is a senator from Vermont, he retired after 8 terms. There's a part of me who that wanted him to go for one more, because apparently I think the current record holder for longest serving U.S. senator is Robert Byrd, who has some history, given that I think he was a Ku Klux Klan member at one time. I think he's a repentant Ku Klux Klan member. But yes. I that's a record I would like to see broken, actually.
Yeah. Well, my feelings on term limits. I think that we could have a constitutional amendment just on the Senate. And we could get the House to vote for that and maybe pressure the Senate to vote for it. And we could get that amendment. The problem is they keep trying to wrap in the term limits for the House. I think the teaser in it all would be, listen, you do your 2 or 3 terms in the Senate, you get out, you still got a taste for politics. You can find a House seat, you can run, you can still be in Washington, you can still, get that flavor of being in the Capitol.
I've actually wondered, by the way, whether it's even wise to have our senators elected, because we're in Canada, and I think also in the UK, they have an upper house that's not elected, and it's not seen to have the same democratic legitimacy as the lower house.
Yeah, it doesn't. The problem, if you took, civics in high school, like we did, you would have learned that there was a very good reason that they came up with that amendment to vote in the senators, because it was a vastly corrupt system of, passing the parcel of money around and backslapping and smoke-filled rooms to put people up in the Senate who didn't really belong there.
Yeah. The other reform that I would actually introduce, it's a bit of an unusual one, but it would be a federal requirement that when there's a vacancy in the House, that it needs to be filled within 90 days or 91 days.
Right. I think there's a lot of shenanigans with filling seats with cronies with vacancies, and a lot of playing around that angle with the vacancies. Another constitutional amendment I'd make, it's never going to pass, is also to say if you're in the Senate and you're going to run for president of the United States, you have to resign.
Yeah, that I can see
Because
what
there's too many people in the Senate who are just like, it's just double A presidential ball for them. That's part of the reason we don't get a lot done. If you were just in the Senate as a senator instead of running for president all the time, you know, we got what, 15, 20 people in the Senate who think they're running for president,
yeah.
you know,
Some
from
states some
Tim
states actually
Scott to Josh Hawley to, you know, Klobuchar to, you know, half a dozen Democrats.
Yeah, some states actually have that requirement. It's just that whenever that state elects someone that the politicians see, oh yeah, he's presidential material, they do away with that requirement.
Yeah.
Like I think
So
Arkansas.
we were gonna move on to Ukraine.
Yes. I'm dwelling too much on American politics. It's depressing. Let's talk about what's going on in Ukraine, because from what I've heard, in the east at least, Russia has been advancing slowly. We had those big Ukrainian pushes in the last few months at Kharkiv and at Kherson, with the only regional capital the Russians captured now being liberated. But I think in the east, I think Russia, it's cost them a lot of men, and it's been a slow meat grinder. But Russia is making a bit of progress in the east. They've taken Solidar. I think they might even take Bakhmut.
Yes. It just goes, it's a little bit tragic in that, you know, if Ukraine had a Western Air Force, this would be a much different war.
Yeah.
The fact that nobody has air superiority certainly says to me that the United States and the West is very lucky in that they have their air forces. If the Ukraine had a Western Air Force, just to say Belgium standards, you know, 50 F-16s and the capability to repair them, this would be a vastly different war. The idea that we're in the 21st century, it's 2023, and we're fighting basically a World War I Somme Verdun style campaign in the East is remarkable to me. And you know, the Russians, they have a lot of people with this mobilization, and as I read a quote saying, there is quality in quantity. They can keep throwing. What we're hearing is they're throwing the conscripts up front. They're causing the Ukrainians to use all their ammunition. Then they push up better troops behind the conscripts who are all dead by this time, the Mobics they call them, and then they push up the better troops to capture that position. It seems to be working, and it seems like they can do it for a long time if they're dedicated to killing off all their men. I gotta wonder though, if you look back in history to World War I, when that was the same thing that happened on the Eastern Front with Russia, and finally there were the army mutiny. There were a lot of mutinies in the army, and there are a lot of after so many casualties, they got fed up, and the army broke apart, and that helped cause the 1917 revolution, and then Russia, you know, withdrew from the Eastern Front. You got to wonder how long that can be sustained in an army before the army really breaks apart morale wise. I mean, if all your best are getting hit too, how long can you sustain it? According to Putin, a long time. Maybe he's right. Maybe he can sustain it for a long time. Maybe they can capture Bakhmut and these other places. There's a lot of stories about, you know, them putting on another front to Kyiv and from Belarus. I just don't see it happening. I think it's a fake. They're just keeping Ukrainian troops up there so they're not out in the Eastern Front.
Yeah, what people don't understand, like, and then is that Ukrainians were caught by surprise the last year, and look what happened. The Russians got utterly demolished in Kyiv, and this time, if they tried that stunt again, like, they're going to face a battle-hardened army, and also you have to remember that area is probably now heavily mined. So they'd be walking into a death trap. So I think you're right that the Russian troops in Belarus, I think it's a feint to keep Ukrainian troops up there where they, instead of, but I don't agree that Ukraine's next push is going to be in the east. I think it's going to be in the south. I think what they might want to do is drive a wedge at Zaporizhia, try to get to the Sea of Azov, and then you basically are able to put Kherson and Crimea under siege, and then you slowly squeeze the Russians out of there. I think the east is going to be harder to take because the supply lines are much shorter.
I see that, and I think everybody else sees that too. But I'm not sure that Ukraine has the offensive capabilities yet. These dribs and drabs of tanks and armored vehicles, you get 90 Bradleys here, you get 90 Leopard tanks there. I mean, really, if you're going to be in this kind of a war, you got to have 600 tanks. 90 tanks isn't going to cut it. You need, 1,000, Bradley vehicles. You need a modern air force. You need ammunition and 155 millimeter shells. The NATO rounds now are getting depleted, and they're trying to ramp up production there. So Russia does have one thing, and that's artillery, and it has the ammo for that artillery. They say they're getting a little bit more depleted, but what does depleted mean for Russia? Because they're still outgunning Ukraine on artillery rounds every day. Hopefully, these longer range weapons, the guided bombs that they're talking about, these rounds, ground launch bombs, will help to target areas that they haven't been able to target. My main complaint, me, I'm an old neocon. I'm an old hawk here. I'm a McCain, neocon. Let's help these people out. My complaint is that Ukraine can't trade anything. There can't be any negotiations when everything is in your own country. If they had, say, Belgorod, if they had some Russian territory or even slice of Belarus, they could trade against that. But right now, the NATO and the West are hamstringing them and saying, we're not going to allow you to any incursions into Russian territory. I mean, it's one hand tied behind your back. How can they win if they can't make a drive into Russia and do things that they need to do with long range guided missiles that bomb airports in Russia?
Exactly. And I think that in this instance, I think that the position that taken by countries like Poland, Czech Republic, the Baltic states, and even the United Kingdom, I think is the correct one. I think, like that's one camp. And I think, in the other camp, you could put France, Germany, and Italy, who might waffle, especially if the United States decides to waffle.
Right.
But I am heartened by the fact that I heard this commentator say that at least you can say that every NATO country not named Hungary recognizes that a Ukrainian victory would benefit all of Europe.
Yes, I think Ukraine should be in the EU. I know they got problems with corruption, but so did, a lot of these countries were basket cases when they joined NATO, when they joined the EU. Countries like Greece, in Italy, when they joined NATO, they weren't exactly these beacons of democracy throughout the world. These were dictatorships or rottenly run democracies. Now,
and Spain and Portugal as well.
Right, and Ukraine is a corrupt country. So be it. If we can help them to not be a corrupt country, that'd be great. My neocon dream is to just say, break Ukraine in half, and Western Ukraine, make it a NATO or a UK, US, Poland ally, put in troops and air squadrons in the west of the Dnieper, and then allow the Ukrainians to use all their armor and everything in the east. They don't have to stand by for Belarus anymore.
Yeah, but I think what the United States is moving towards with Ukraine is actually similar to what they do with Israel, which is provide the weaponry and the supplies needed so that Israel can defend it, or that Ukraine can defend itself with its own troops and doesn't need American troops or NATO troops actually on the ground. It's like it's known as defending itself by itself is the term that we
Yeah,
use.
but I don't think Ukraine has the offensive capabilities yet to take on the Russians. I mean, the Russians, there are Russia stands out there who I argue with bitterly, but they do make valid points. Russia has gained territory since February 22nd. All right, they've lost it since August, but they did have gained territory. They gained all of the Azov coast. They gained all the way up to Kherson. They secured Crimea. They advanced in many different places, places like Popasna and everything, and they continue to maintain that territory, and they have a lot of. They're not the Russians' offensive capabilities are torn right now, but it's going to be tough to go against them if they're on defense.
Right. So, I mean, that's sort of why I thought that, because from what I've heard, Zaporizhia is like, at least as of a couple of months ago, was like the least defended part of the Russian line. But I don't know how true that is anymore.
I think, there's a lot of shake and bake with this Ukrainian military. They play their cards very close to the vest. They don't like you to know what they're going to do or when they're going to do it. That's why they say we're going on the offensive in Kherson, but that took a long time, and then all of a sudden they were on the offensive in Kharkiv, right? And they took a lot of territory there without anybody noticing. So I don't think you're going to hear about Zaporizhia. You're not going to hear about Melitopol or Mariupol. And if it happens, it happens. But I think everybody beyond us can look at the map too and think that that's probably the best angle. Make a break to the Azov coast, break the Russian army in half, and squeeze down on Crimea and those Russian units.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually about to say something, and
F-16s.
F6, yes, yeah, F-16s. Why aren't we sending them?
I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy. Maybe we're getting ready to send them, but we're laying the groundwork. Who's
Right.
to know?
It's fears about escalation.
Well, here's the deal with F-16s, and people would say back last June, you can't deliver F-16s. The pilots are going to take 6 months to train. The logistics are going to take a year. And here we are in February, and I say, well, if we started last June, we'd almost be ready now with the F-16s.
The truth is, like with the F-16s, I actually see more of a pressing urge to send Ukraine Atakams, the HIMARS, but the 300K range.
Yeah, I think what we're on what they call this escalatory ladder. You move up. Biden administration is moving up slowly, and I guess it's worked. You and I want things to go faster because poor Ukrainian young men and women are dying by the dozen every day out on the front. And if they had the weapons they required, then maybe they wouldn't. But the Biden administration feels that if they move up slowly up this escalatory ladder, it won't bring out the threat of invading Poland, I guess. I don't know. What is Russia going to do more than they're already doing? I don't really quite understand it. I mean, why don't we go all the way up on the threat immediately and put in a no-fly zone? What are they going to do? What can Russia do?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the war, I figured Russia's goal was actually total invasion of Ukraine, and then from there, Moldova. But but clearly that's
I think the Biden escalatory ladder is more to do with our allies.
Yeah.
Allies like Germany than it is to do with Russia.
Yeah, I mean, and this is honestly on one area. I mean, I think you and I have been critical of Poland in the past, but on this issue, Poland is absolutely in the right side.
Thank God they're on our side. And I've been to Poland, and it's one of the few countries that really, really loves America and Americans because they know we were on their side during the Cold War, and Now they know what it was like to live under the yoke of Russian colonialism, because let's face it, that's what it was. It wasn't a communist utopia. It was basically imperialist Russia.
And a benefit of this war for European small d Democrats has been that there was an informal alliance between Orban in Hungary and Poland, and now that's gone because unlike Poland, which is anti-Russian, Hungary has, how do I put this, played nice with the Kremlin.
Yeah, I know. I've had the same difficulties you have with these countries like Turkey, who's not letting Sweden in now, and Hungary. But better in than out, right? Better in the alliance that being a nuisance than out being a worse nuisance, I guess.
Yeah, and is, as much as I hate to say this, that goes doubly for Turkey because they control that strategic position.
Yes, yeah. It seems like things have died down on the Odessa front, though. They are able to move ships in and out, but
well, that's easy to do when you've pushed the Russians out of Kherson. They're
yeah.
now what, 3 cities away from that area.
Well, I'm very hopeful, but it's also tragic that all these young Ukrainians are dying while they're waiting for us to, slowly feed them the weapons that they need. There may be issues with the production as well on our side.
Yep.
We're not used to this level of ammunition, and I think we've learned a lesson that we need more on hand, because if we only have a month's worth of ammunition in Taiwan, we're going to lose.
Yeah, and people, I mean, but to your point about, the young men dying in Ukraine, people don't remember this, but if you were a Soviet man born in 1923, you only had a 33% chance of surviving the war.
Wow.
That because and actually every generation or so that continues to have ripple effects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to see the end result being Russia's broken up, because they've been a nuisance all our lives. And if we had, Russia broken up into smaller states, perhaps they could be less of a nuisance.
Right. And that actually leads me to a point that hasn't been talked about a lot, but I actually, I've been talking about it more, which is that after the Soviet Union broke up, you sort of had these frozen conflicts. And with Russia, which was the peacemaker in that area, sort of shown to be, incompetent, some of these conflicts are thawing.
Right. You look at Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Dagestan, Chechnya, all these places. Russia hasn't exactly been a source of goodwill and stability. I mean, even we haven't solved Haiti, but we go in once every 20 years and straighten it out a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that talked about as the next place that the United States might deploy troops to, because apparently, like in Port-au-Prince, like the city is basically run by the gangs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's not a lot of interest in moving American troops around anymore after Afghanistan and Iraq, so it's hard to generate that kind of level of support. Me, I'd prefer to just make Cuba and Haiti 51st and 52nd states, and that would straighten it out, right?
Yeah, no, America had a chance to make Cuba a U.S. state after the Spanish-American War, but an isolationist contingent in Congress basically made it so that, McKinley and Roosevelt had to basically let Cuba become independent. And I'm thinking if that faction had lost, Cuba would be a better place today.
Absolutely. I mean, you would have some awful results for a little while if you made, Haiti and Cuba states. You'd have a lot of infiltration of the gangs into South Florida and various places. But in the end, would be better off. So, and also, like little places like, I always look at Vancouver Island and I think, why is that in Canada? That should be a 51st American state.
I'm surprised that you guys have not marched all like that. There's the maritime provinces and that slice of southern Quebec that's basically on the southern edge of the St. Lawrence River. I'm surprised you guys have not taken that from us yet.
Well, if you were more of a nuisance, we might, but you keep quiet so we don't notice you.
Yeah. Anyway, Joe, like really great to talk to you again.
Yeah, great
We
to
sh
talk to you, Jonathan.
we need to follow these like events, more closely, and we need to update our viewers more regularly. But
What about Twitter? We forgot to talk about Twitter. It all kind of fell apart.
okay,
It's
let's
just
talk about that.
it's it's a horror show now. I never see the people I used to see. I never see you. I never see all our friends on Twitter. All I see are like dark rantings of cat turd or
I,
whatever his name.
I used to get regular updates on Ukraine, but lately I've been getting ads for like these NFTs. Like, what is going on?
I know, and my Ukraine thread is full of like various things from Italian elections or something. I'm like, I can't win.
Yeah, I
All
mean,
right, great talking to you, Jonathan.
all right. We will update our viewers, you guys, regularly on events in Ukraine. Hopefully, things are settling down now. And if you guys like my new office, you guys can thank my wife for putting this all together.
Excellent.